We're joined by CBS News foreign policy and national security contributor, retired Lieutenant General H.R. McMaster. General, great to see you as always. So our colleague, Aaron McLean, who's a CBS News national security analyst, just like you, has a new piece out on the Free Press. He said it's time for the president to make up his mind about Iran after at least 5 of these Groundhog's Day moments. So we'll talk a little bit about the depletion of our stockpile of long-range missiles. But do you think that the president is, and this is asking you, I guess, General, to think back to other presidents who found themselves in situations like this, where they've undergone military action with perhaps an intention to rapidly wrap up that military intervention or that military action, and then find themselves, and I'm not ready to say that this is a quagmire, but something akin to it, which is that we do not yet seem to have an exit strategy or even a goal to be able to articulate to the American people, other than the president keeps reiterating that we don't want Iran to have a nuclear weapon. Well, the headline is no American president has wanted Iran to have a nuclear weapon, but this president is the only one that has found himself in this situation. So what's your assessment of Aaron's analysis, which is that the president needs to, given that this is happening so many times, needs to come out and say, what are we doing here?
Hey, Vlad, it's great to be with you and Kelly. Well, there has been this ambiguity because of this vacillation back and forth, the ceasefire war, if you will, with these, the announcement of the agreements. I mean, one of them, it was the MOU, remember, in June, and then we went right back into conflict again with periodic ceasefires, and then the tit for tat kind of reprisals. And so it does have a lot to do with President Trump's approach. President Trump believes that he's the deal maker. He can get the deal. He can get the deal with the prospect of using a heck of a lot more force in the future. But other presidents have fallen into the same kind of assumption about the nature of your enemy. I'm thinking about Lyndon Johnson in particular, Vlad, and this is the topic of a book I wrote years ago in 1997 about how and why Vietnam became an American war. Lyndon Johnson was operating on the assumption that limited strikes against North Vietnam and the prospect of more destruction later would convince Ho Chi Minh and the North Vietnamese leadership to radically reduce or desist from their support for Vietnamese communists in South Vietnam. Hey, it didn't work. And the reason it didn't work is because Lyndon Johnson was mirror imaging Ho Chi Minh. He thought, well, this is the kind of decision I would make, but he undervalued the degree to which ideology drove and constrained the North Vietnamese leadership, and then how emotion played in. Once you start bombing somebody, and you inflict death and destruction, it unleashes an emotional dynamic that defies any kind of just clear-headed kind of negotiation approach to this. I think that's where we are, Vlad. I mean, this isn't going to hold, I don't think, not because of Donald Trump as much, but because of the radical ideology of the revolution in Iran, which includes as one of its prominent features permanent hostility, to the great Satan, the little Satan Israel, and their Arab neighbors. So I think what you're going to see is probably a short-term alleviation of the pressure on the Strait, and then a return to conflict at some point. Because remember, hey, this has been going on for 47 years.
I love that analogy, General, to what happened with LBJ and Vietnam, because then it just sort of makes me think about the Mad Men theory, which happened under President Nixon. And we're still talking about the very same war. President Nixon and then Secretary of State Henry Kissinger decided to start bombing Cambodia. And although Cambodia was neutral in that war, the president and the U.S. government, I believe, that the North Vietnamese were finding sanctuary in Cambodia. So I think that there was a theory that if President Nixon starts bombing neighbors to Vietnam, that the North Vietnamese will think, well, this guy's serious. We're not going to ever defeat the United States. Nixon will keep going. Maybe this is why we should sue for war. President Trump has used similar language that have led people to say, why is he saying he wants to destroy civilization? Do we think, again, there's something to be gleaned from history in this moment?
Yeah, he's saying it for bargaining purposes. I don't think for a second the president wants to destroy Iran's civilization, the Persian civilization. I mean, because, obviously, logically, we should be on the side of the Iranian people. We have to remember that this regime, they killed, some people think, 52,000 people in a 72-hour period in January. So just from a humanitarian perspective, we should be on the side of this regime. But also, it's ultimately going to be the Iranian people who throw off the yoke of this terrible regime that's been in power, for 47 years. And so we should be on their side. I mean, people think, most people think about 80% of the Iranian people are opposed to the regime. 20% are like adamantly for them. 20% within the 80% that oppose the regime are adamantly will take risks against them. But, we should be on the side of those who want to build a better future for Iranians. The one thing I will say, Vlad, is that's different is that President Trump is the first president who has acted like he knows what the return address is for so much of the death and destruction and suffering that we've suffered and Iran's Arab neighbors and Israel have suffered by imposing costs on Iran. Iran, as you know, in the last couple of weeks, has tried to kind of rekindle their proxies, regenerate their proxies. As soon as the latest ceasefire went into place, they activated the Houthis in the Red Sea. They tried to activate the Hashtag-Shabi militias in Iraq against Saudi Arabia. So, we're going to see a continuation of the conflict in maybe a different form. It's going to whatever this agreement is, Vlad, on the Strait, it's just going to be an evolution of this conflict into another phase.
And I think that's exactly why people do not want those frozen assets unfrozen, because to your point, Iran then just feeds it and the conflict continues in another form by proxy. I do want to get your reaction to something from former Obama Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel. He was on the Daily Report last night talking to our colleague Lindsay Reiser. Vlad was asking you about this piece of a war without a strategy. Hagel said that President Trump is dealing with, quote, the residue of starting a war without a strategy. So let me just play you a bit and I'll get your reaction.
You started with supreme arrogance and you don't know what you're doing. And it always ends in failure. It always ends badly. And it always ends by spreading to every dynamic of the world. We've got 3 waterways now that are all tied up because of this. This is resulting in economic collapse, failure, problems around the world, not just for the United States and not just for Middle Eastern countries, but Asian countries everywhere.
General, I don't think that we're at the point of collapse yet, though. What's your reaction to that?
I mean, I think it's nonsense. I mean, Kelly, I think we're in the position we're in now largely because of the policies of the Obama and the Biden administrations, which did exactly what you warned about. Hey, don't let the money flow into the coffers of the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps so they can build this massive drone missile strike complex and so they can build these terrorist groups and these militias that has caused so much destruction and suffering across the region, including lighting the Ring of Fire around Israel on October 7th, 2023. So I think we're in this situation because we kept kicking the can down the road. We kept operating under the assumption that, oh, hey, if we welcome the Islamic Republic into the international order, if we alleviate sanctions, they'll see the economic benefit. The Ayatollah's heart will grow 2 sizes larger like the Grinch on Christmas Eve, and everything will be okay. No, that's not the way it works, because the regime has a strong grip on power through the repressive arms of the Basij and the IRGC, but also because they control the economy through these bunyads or these collectives, so that they control people's life choices. They own the repressive arms of the regime. So, hey, I would say the idea that the United States is the cause of these problems. Hey, no, it's not. The Islamic Republic, the leadership there, the RGC, they're the cause of it. But we could use a great deal more clarity. We had clarity and objectives at the beginning. I think we have to stick with them. That includes blocking the path to a nuclear weapon, but it also includes, very importantly, preventing Iran from projecting power effectively outside of its borders, with this missile drone strike complex and through its proxies from Hezbollah to Hamas to PIJ to the Houthis to the Hashtag-Shabi militias in Iraq. That should still be, I think, our objectives. And hey, I guess the bottom line is it's not over, because war is this continuous interaction with your adversary, your enemy.
General H.R. McMaster, it is always so great to talk to you and get your perspective. Thank you.
Thanks, John.